Welcome to the Living Chronic Special Series, Military, Medicine, and the Mission Left Behind. In this powerful series, we're taking a hard, unflinching look at the cracks in the systems meant to care for those who serve. We'll examine the deep cuts to the military health system and how they're impacting service members, retirees, and military families. We'll talk about the VA, what's working, what's not, and the looming threats of cuts and privatization. We'll tackle the tough topics others often avoid: suicide, PTSD, gaps in care, and the devastating ways veterans and families are being left behind. You'll hear real stories, learn how to advocate for yourself and your loved ones, and understand the unique challenges faced by military and veteran communities. Our mission is simple: shine a light, spark change, and fight for the care and dignity our service members and their families have earned. We'll return to our regular Living Chronic content soon, but right now, if you've served or if you know someone who has, please share this series. Together, we can push for real change and make a real difference in the lives of those who've sacrificed so much. This is Brandy Schantz, and you're listening to Living Chronic, Veterans, Military Medicine, and the Mission Left Behind, our special series. Today I'm here with Jen. She's a military spouse and now a chronic illness warrior living with cancer, the big C. But welcome, Jen. Thank you for coming on the show, especially during such a difficult time. I know you're going through treatments right now. Colon cancer is not easy. So I appreciate you taking the time out of a busy schedule and a very difficult time in your life.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So you and I have some unfortunate similarities. We both were misdiagnosed by military medicine in the Washington, D.C. area. And folks, if you don't know, everybody thinks that we get all the best stuff here in D.C. So, I don't know how surprised you. I was shocked. I was like, wow, I got misdiagnosed for 19 months. I thought we were supposed to be the best. What happened here? But same thing happened to you. Tell me a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so oh my goodness, I was hoping that I would get great healthcare being back in DC when we were in Colorado Springs. I feel like I had more slim pickings, but I ended up
Mhm.
having some great providers. And when I switched to DC, you know how it is when you move, it's like you have to reestablish a relationship and connection all over again, especially, with these providers who are, you know, they can be very sweet and nice, but you are an expert in your body already, and they're, just I don't know what it is, but they just fought me all the time. And so when I had moved
Mhm.
to DC, I ended up gaining a significant amount of weight, probably from stress, my autoimmune disease, and other things. And also as an adoptee, I knew I didn't have much family history to go off of. So anytime I would go in for these appointments, I would say things like, this is not right. This is not me. I worked as a functional health coach. I was a yoga teacher. I was so very active, and my body was not responding or showing up the way that it always had. And so I would just get constantly written off, constantly, like, oh, you just probably need to lose some weight and you'll feel better. Or you
Mhm.
just need to, do this or that. Or, okay, we'll refer you to a physical therapist. But then I would get referred to like a workman's comp physical therapist.
Oh,
And I'm
good.
sitting here with
That's helpful.
I know. And when you're like a busy, I was a busy stay-at-home mom with three young kids, and I didn't have time for a workman's comp physical therapist. I just didn't have the capacity to keep going to these appointments where they would just, write me off, or you should just stretch this way or do that, and so at some point I would just, hear what they were saying and think like this is not helpful. And unless I could find what I needed or the type of provider I wanted and convince them to give me those referrals, I was just kind of out of luck. And so I had already had this kind of this pre-existing like exhaustion from having to fight for every single little
Yeah.
thing, and it didn't really matter if I had switched to standard because I was on the HMO, and if I switched to the PPO, like the DC area is just so saturated and people don't
Mm-hmm.
want to take TRICARE, which I understand
Yeah.
that. And so
Yeah.
it really didn't matter what I was doing. I was constantly hitting a wall with care and treatment, even preventative treatment. And that's when I had asked for a colonoscopy and was denied. And I was 30, I think like 39 years old the first time I asked for one, and um that I was just so tired of fighting for every single thing that when they said, well, you don't have any symptoms of colon cancer, I thought, okay, well, maybe this is just the one area that I, kind of not backtrack on, but just kind of step off of because I had had
Right.
to arrange all of my care. And
Mm-hmm.
so just even preventative things, which at the time I thought would just be a preventative thing, I didn't realize that something like that would have literally saved my life if I had pushed for it. But when you're
Mm-hmm.
pushing for just basic things, like it just gets so exhausting.
It does. At one point, I asked Walter Reed to put in my chart very clear and upfront what I was going through and tell them I have medical trauma. Please do not start with me. Was
Right.
kind of the gist of the statement I asked them to put on there because it's exhausting. You can only fight for yourself so long, and it you feel crazy.
Yeah.
I've questioned my own life experience and body so many times because I thought maybe I am crazy. Maybe I'm not really feeling this.
Right.
Maybe it's all in my head. Maybe it is all in my head. And
Yeah.
it's not until you get to that doctor that does the tests that you need that you realize, oh, I'm not crazy at all.
Right.
And unfortunately, that's how it happened for you. And you are stage 4
Yeah, I'm stage
colon cancer?
stage 4 colon cancer. So my cancer is I have two tumors the size of almost grapefruits, one in my colon and one in my liver because of this. And
Mm,
so this has quite been going on for quite some time, and I just didn't have their symptoms that they were looking for. But to be
hmm
fair, I should have known better. Years ago when we were on JBAB the first time, I went in for strep throat and my doctor decided to just, he wrote me off. He's like, I don't think you have strep throat, but I see you're not on birth control. So we should talk about birth control. And I was like, are you kidding me? So I went to an urgent care and my doctor there said, you clearly have strep throat. I see it. Looking in your throat. And so I think what the clinic needs to do is just be extremely honest about the type of care that they were willing to provide, and if they don't want to dive into these deep, difficult things, then they should just be really upfront about that. But they should have given me, they should have referred me for a colonoscopy. And I could tell the hesitation was probably because, it's not that standard. It's like not their standard of care. And so they should have at least given me a way to figure out how to do it myself instead of telling me, oh, you're fine, you're young, you know, there's probably nothing
right.
wrong with you. You don't have any symptoms. We see no reason to give you this. And here I am sitting here. I was in the hospital on my 41st birthday, waiting for this
Yeah.
diagnosis. And I still wouldn't fit
It,
their criteria for 5 more years. So,
what's so infuriating about that is what is the criteria? What is the criteria? Younger and younger people are being diagnosed with colon cancer all the time.
yeah.
We all remember when Chadwick Boseman died. I think was he 41 years old? He was so, so young. He was so young, and this is happening every single day. So, what is your criteria? The other thought I have is toxic exposure. And we talked about this a little bit before we started the show. We talk a lot about toxic exposure in terms of the burn pits and service members being exposed to these burn pits and subsequently getting these diseases, these rare cancers, these autoimmune diseases. But spouses and family members are very much exposed to toxins as well. Every military base, you're probably exposed to toxins there. There are so many different bases that still have issues with various munitions that have been buried under the ground.
Mm-hmm.
You got the fire foam that's being sprayed just, not even a quarter mile away from family housing. There's
Hmm.
so many toxic exposures that you are exposed to, just like your service member, family member.
Yeah,
Why would there not be increased screening for colon cancer in our younger family members?
I agree.
That's infuriating.
I totally agree. And they know that we're exposed to this.
Hmm.
And I've heard stories of not my friends, but friends of friends who were young, healthy women who ended up just, riddled with cancer and
Hmm.
grew up as a military, military brat, grew up
Hmm.
in this, and then went on to marry a military member or become one. And it's just wild to me, And if
Yeah.
people are having unexplained symptoms too, why not? Why not just figure out a way to test for it, screen it?
Yes. Preventative care is so much cheaper
So much cheaper.
than treatment care. So
Yeah.
much cheaper. And also, you save lives. How much better is it to catch colon cancer at stage 1 versus stage 4?
Oh, exactly. Exactly. It would have been so much more treatable, because when I had my colonoscopy, they removed 6 millimeter polyps that
Wow.
were before they were cancerous, you
Yeah.
know, and that's just part of the colonoscopy,
Yep.
and then
Oh,
meanwhile, that I just have this full on cancer tumor, that they could remove with great risk, or now I have to go through treatment before we remove what we're able to remove. And so
yes.
it's just so risky, but it could have been easily prevented. And they didn't offer me anything preventative. I had to really ask for everything. And it just got so
Hmm.
exhausting when I finally convinced them to give me a mammogram and to get a skin check for skin cancer, and
Yeah.
do all of these things. And I'm like, why isn't this just a
Standard.
standard of
It should
care?
be. It
Yeah.
should be. You know, one of the things that I think I know a lot about IBD and colon cancer, being a Crohn's patient, I have a podcast. I'm on the board of the Crohn's Colitis Foundation in DC. Uh, but I learned more speaking to you because one of your symptoms was weight gain.
Yeah.
And my doctors are always on top of me. Did you lose weight? Have you lost weight?
Mhm.
Are you losing weight? So I'm always worried about losing weight. But weight gain was one of your symptoms.
Yeah, which is crazy. And that's, and that was kind of the thing. But when you're someone who gains weight, that's all they focus on. That's literally all they
Right.
focus on, right? And it's you can't be anything other than you're just fat. And you
Yes.
probably weren't working out or you probably weren't eating well.
Yeah.
And I am like one of the healthiest people, just like you. I am one of the healthiest people I know, just like you're one of the healthiest people you know. And so it is so shocking to me, but once you're in a heavier body, you are just a heavy person to them, and nothing else
Yes.
matters in terms of their tests. And so everything circles back to, well, you just need to learn how to lose weight the healthy way. And I'm sitting here thinking like, this is not normal. Like, this is a red flag.
You know, this is especially this whole conversation is especially poignant to me because I also recently gained a lot of weight as I went through my dysautonomia and POTS diagnosis,
Right.
and I kept trying to tell them. I mean, the whole diagnosis similar,
Hmm.
experience to what you went through. When I told the doc, I mean, I was a runner, a very good runner, a triathlete, a very accomplished one. And I would tell them, I cannot run. And I would hear
Right.
things like, well, maybe you're going out too fast. You know, if you're not hydrated, it can affect. And do you think I've been running for 40 years without knowing these things,
Right.
Doc? Are you serious? And then when I started gaining weight, and I said, I'm gaining weight, and there's no explanation.
Yeah.
They, well, to lose weight, you have to. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Can you please look at my records for a quick minute? And it turns out, I think, I might be getting this wrong. Somebody out there is fact checking me and saying, nope, you got it wrong. But I think it was like 8% of people with dysautonomia get unexplained weight gain.
Yeah.
And that was me. But nobody, they weren't looking at the big picture of all these symptoms I had. It was, well, you should probably be eating more fish and less steak. And I'm like, what?
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy because
You missed the entire diagnosis.
yeah, because they're just so not trained in it. And instead of saying like, I
Hmm.
don't have the proper training in this, They throw out what they think is the case, and I think, and I don't know where this stems to in training and all of this, but if I was a doctor or if I was some sort of provider, I would want to say, wow, like this, this is unusual for you. What can we do to figure this out? Even if you think
Mm-hmm.
it's a waste of time and money, or even if you think it's this or that, like in my case and your case, they would have found something,
Yes.
and they would
And,
have,
and ask questions.
yeah.
I mean, my goodness, I didn't know that 8% of people with dysautonomia experienced weight gain. And I never in a million years thought weight gain could be a symptom of colon cancer. But
Yeah.
obviously it is. So, hey, we're not all usual. And again, if you've listened to my show, especially if you've listened to any of the veteran specific shows, you know that the rare cancers, the rare
Hmm.
symptoms, they come with those of us who've been exposed to toxins all the time. And again, just because you're a spouse and not a service member does not mean you haven't been exposed to toxins. We should be looking at the unusual.
Yeah, it should be considered, and it's so funny because it's just they ask these questions, and I'm thinking like we are military, we're in this military community. We don't have, I don't know. They act surprised. They seem to act so surprised when
Hmm.
we discuss this stuff, and it's like my friends and I talk about the stress factor of things.
Yes.
When they're surprised that we're stressed, because that was one of my things when I went in and asked for a colonoscopy. They sent me out with a diagnosis of depressive disorder, and I'm looking back at all of
Hmm.
these things and I'm like, we are all so stressed. All of us are so stressed. Like this is
Yes.
it's a stressful life. We end up in hugely stressful seasons of life.
Hmm.
We do have this exposure. We do have physical things happening from all of this, but the fact that it's so easily written off as, you just have anxiety or you're just stressed or you're just
Hmm.
anything. And that when I went to the hospital, when I finally got my diagnosis, I was severely anemic. And the whole time it was like, oh, you're probably, it's probably just stress and anxiety. And at that time, I believed it because I am not an anxious person. And I have a lot of ways to handle my stress, but we were PCSing. And so when you're
Yeah.
kind of in that season, that's stressful. So, like,
Yes.
maybe it's stress. I don't know. And then when you have a hemoglobin of 5 and the next step from there is having a stroke or just dropping dead, then, maybe it might be something a little more than that. And when you're going back to symptoms, a lot of us don't have symptoms and don't have like the normal
Right.
symptoms.
Right.
You can't tell. Like you would think I could feel 2 grapefruit-sized tumors in my body. I can't feel them at all. You know,
Yeah.
it's just they're there and I can't feel them.
Right. No, you're right.
So,
And, all you can do is ask for appropriate medical care.
hmm
But the truth is, if they're not going to listen and if they're going to just say, oh, you're just depressed and stressed out,
yeah,
or you're just eating too much food,
yeah,
there's only so much you can do. And I think there's so many similarities with all of us. You do get
yeah,
tired of pushing and advocating for yourself. There's only so many years you can do it. There's only so long you can do it before you're like, you know
right,
what? I can't do it anymore. I'm
yeah.
at the end of this road. I need to take a turn. I need to turn right. I need to turn left, but I need to take a turn. I can't
I
keep
need
doing
to live
this.
my life because
Yeah. I got to move on.
I can't be obsessed with this all the time. I might be dealing with it
Yeah.
every day, but I have to find a way around it, And so, what do you do from
When
there?
you got kids depending on you,
Yeah.
your husband's depending on you. Civilians will never get this, but in the military, and this still goes on today in the year 2025, but which blows my mind, spouses are fully intended to have their own full-time job to support their service member.
Mm-hmm.
Free of charge, no pay, you're there. And I remember, women in the military know this better than anybody because they would always
Mm-hmm.
expect us to have a spouse there to do something. And I'm like, my spouse is at work too.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have to. He's otherwise engaged. I don't know what to say. You're gonna have to go down there and find him. But you're busy with that too.
Right. Right. You're just busy and you know this and people in the chronic chronic illness, community know this, but you just start to feel like a burden at some point.
Yeah.
Because here you
Yeah, you
are,
do.
just tired again, just in pain again, and my husband apologized to me for he's never said anything terrible to me or mean, but he would try to encourage me too. Like, what if you just, did more like heavy loaded squats and then you could build up,
Right.
build up your leg muscles and then that will give you more energy, and like, and I'm
But
just
his
like,
heart was in the right place, and he's not wrong. I do
right,
that for my pots all the time. It's, you know what? The strong
right.
legs really do take you somewhere.
It's so true,
His heart's in the right place.
It's so funny because then my whole family looks back at it and is like, "Oh my gosh, like you were literally
And I had
dying."
cancer.
I'm like, "Yeah, I was
Yes.
dying. Like I still am, I mean, I think things will be fine, but you know, I'm like, you guys have to believe me. Like I know it's been years of me having these symptoms, but once things started getting so much worse and not me being able to stabilize is when I realized, okay, maybe this is something extremely serious.
Hmm.
But you just
Yeah.
your loved ones are just like, okay, here she here she is again.
But, you're dismissed by these doctors over and over and over again. So, like I said,
Right.
you, your family, everybody starts to think, well, maybe I am crazy. Maybe I'm not feeling, maybe it is that I'm
Right.
just overweight. My goodness, maybe that is causing cancer like symptoms.
Maybe. you know.
You do question yourself. That's completely normal,
Yeah.
It's hard. And, we have such similarities in what we went through in this DC metro area. Again, everybody thinks,
Mhm.
oh, you're probably getting the best health care. You have such great doctors around there. But this is a good time to talk about a couple of things that are going on in military healthcare right now. The first is when there was the big downsizing of military treatment facilities. And they said, well, we'll just send everybody. They started getting rid of all of the non combat related healthcare on base. We'll just send everybody out to the community, the private sector, right? Like everybody says that when you're in the military, like it's this glorious utopia out there, the
Mhm.
private sector. Except the private sector doesn't have room for us. They're already overworked. And oh, by the way, TRICARE often reimburses at a rate even lower than Medicare.
Right.
So we're also not paying the doctors in this utopia called the private sector. So they're not taking us, and I don't blame them. When
Yeah.
you're already overworked and you don't have time to take any more patients, why are you going to take on a heavy load
Right.
of TRICARE patients when you're not even going to get reimbursed well for it? So more and more in this area over the last, I think it's been, 5 years since that started, 5, 6 years, I've seen more and more where either offices don't take TRICARE at all, or they just
Mhm.
stop taking new patients. Okay, we'll keep the
Yeah.
guys that we already have, but we're not taking any more of you. So
Yeah.
getting actual care on the community is extremely difficult.
Oh yeah.
And in the meantime, it's hard to get into these military treatment facilities. I've had to, practically pull out, and I'm not kidding here, like, an act of Congress to get to see a specialist at Walter Reed. When I used to just go to Walter Reed, and I got diagnosed with my Crohn's disease there. I had the best doctor in the world. I still miss Dr. Lasik tremendously, and he would send me upstairs to see the rheumatologist. Like, you know what? Let's check you out for this because I hate seeing you with so many problems. But that doesn't exist anymore. And this is a very real problem in the DC metro area.
It
So it's
is.
not surprising that you and I both were misdiagnosed. I both, because when I wasn't getting diagnosed at
Right.
Walter Reed, I thought maybe there's better care at JBAB. And boy, was I wrong. And
Yeah.
then I was misdiagnosed at JBAB. So I don't think it's any surprise that we both had the exact same experience here in the DC area.
No, not at all. And you know what? One of the things was anytime you would get referred to a specialist somewhere, it was you were months out, you
Six
know?
months,
Yeah,
yes.
months out from seeing them. And then they would move, or then they were sick, or
Yeah,
then, something would
yes.
happen. Or you wait all this time and you're thinking, this is going to be the thing that helps me. And you go, and they're like, well, we don't know what to do. So you get referred out to the economy, and there you are at the workman's comp rheumatologist and physical
Yeah,
therapist,
yes,
and which I'm glad those exist, but those don't exist for what I'm dealing with,
right.
and my doctors were always sweet and kind, but they could never go above and beyond. I think when I went for my hypermobile EDS, I met with a rheumatologist that said, well, have you you should try something called low dose naltrexone. And I said, great,
Mm,
can you prescribe it to me? And she said, no, I'm not allowed to. And it's like a nothing medication.
right.
It has to get compounded. That's the big thing. And she's like, I can't, but I think you can find like an online doctor who can do it. And then I was able to do that. But I'm thinking, I'm with
Yes.
you, a doctor right now.
Right. And you
Can you,
can't,
yeah, can you do
yeah.
this for me? And it did help. It helped so much with my pain. And it was like a milligram of naltrexone, and then I would go back to JBAB and talk to my doctor about it. And they would say, no, naltrexone's only used to wean addicts from, things. And I'm like, yeah, at 50 milligrams, but at 1 milligram, it's like nothing, and it treats
Yeah,
your
they're using
pain.
it for a lot now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah, no, I mean, I've been looking into it for my own treatment.
It's great. Well, me and you can talk about that later too, because,
Yeah.
I loved it. But why am I paying $150 to talk to a
Yes.
doctor and then another $60 to a compounding pharmacy, and then you're just doing this and
Yeah.
it adds up. It's like so.
Well, it is getting very expensive too, because like you, I have this long list of issues, and I have to see various doctors and
Mhm.
specialists because there's so many niche things. I have all of the rare diseases. You and I have
Yes.
so many of them together. As a matter of fact, it's interesting. All the rare diseases, we're just lining them up. So and the copays have gone up. There's all these new shared.
Yeah. Don't look. Right. It's not. Yes. Mhm. Right. It's getting harder and harder. And like at JBAB, they just removed a bunch of providers, and people are, well, where do I go? Who do I go to? How can I get in? Like Belvoir has a long wait, Andrews has a long wait. Everybody is busy and it's hard and you can't go out on the economy. And DC was a really stressful place for me to go through what I went through. I am so glad I made it to where I did when I got diagnosed, because I would still be in the process of getting diagnosed, I'm sure, if I was in DC or yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Right. You're right. And that is a promise that they make to us. And it just doesn't. Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and that's what, like you, I want to change that somehow, because it's exhausting, it's expensive. It has taken so much time away from my family. and my community, and so here we are sitting in this place where, I'm now costing a lot of money to the system. Yeah, rest of our lives. Yeah, really, I mean, absolutely, really. For what, under $5,000, they could have found and prevented everything, And now not even talking about my ER bill, my monthly medication is $20,000. And so I don't know what their thinking was. I'm pretty sure the thinking was we don't want to spend money on a colonoscopy because that, is too expensive. But come on, guys, could give a lot of people colonoscopies, you know. Month. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. Yes. Right. Well, and that's the thing. It's like they just don't see the big picture of things. And the big picture is keep us healthy, and limit our exposure and limit what we have to deal with. And instead, and you see this all throughout the military. You see it in privatized housing, especially, put paint over the mold, and then it's not a problem anymore, and when in fact it's a worse problem that's going to cost more money down the road. And but they just don't see that. It's like, what's the cheapest, quickest way to clean something up right now? And essentially it's just sweeping things under the rug. And so, yeah. Hmm. Yes. Yes. Right. Okay. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes. Yeah, however, because of epigenetics, what triggered it? you know Right. Mhm. Yeah. Right. Right. And you see that a lot with a lot of families due to exposure. And I think the thing people know the most about would be mold, but they don't, which is a huge issue in military families. But our land, where you live, the environment you live in, and what you're exposed to is also really huge. And so, what do you do? Because I feel like if there's mold, you can probably find it and blame it. But when it's the jet fuel in your soil, or the whatever's leaching in through your water, or whatever you're inhaling, maybe you can't see that as much, and then, yeah. Mhm. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Right, right. That's what needs to happen. And, meanwhile, we're trying to figure out what we can do, and how do we get that to happen? How do we get them together? Right, right, right. Yeah, I no, I agree with you. There really has to, because we're not the only people with these stories, right? There's so many people. I was overwhelmed with response of similar stories, and people have been fighting these things for years, and it's such a battle. And it doesn't have to be. Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Treatment's going. I'm halfway through my first round of immunotherapy, so we will see how it goes. But I'm losing out on so much time with my family because I'm so tired, and so sick from treatment. And so um when I don't want to get mad about how things happen, I realize the big picture of my life and how much it's affected my life, and how, Yeah. Right. Exactly, exactly. That's how I'm spending the rest of my day today, is two more appointments. And who has time for that? What would I do if I was working a full-time job right now? You know? Yeah. Mhm. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. Right. And that, yeah, you're right. And that is a whole other conversation, because what do you do? I don't know how I would handle this if I was in a different situation right now. And so I feel fortunate, but then I am sick 10 days, 2 weeks after my treatment. And what do I do once we start school in 2 weeks? And I've got to, figure out getting my kids to school and making it to appointments and figuring life out. And so it's, yeah. Mhm. Thank you. Yes. Right. Right. And that's it. Thank you for doing all of that, because that's what I want to take now as action and make a change, because nobody should be going through this. Yeah. Thank you, Brandy. And we need leaders like you too. So you're giving me a voice and a way to move forward. So I really appreciate it.
That's a wrap for this episode of Living Chronic. I hope today's conversation gave you insight, inspiration, or at least a little reassurance that you're not alone on this journey. Living with a chronic illness or disability comes with its challenges, but it also comes with strength, resilience, and a community that understands. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. You could follow me on Instagram at Chronically Brandy Schantz, other socials at Brandy Schantz, or my website at brandyschantz.com for more discussions, advocacy updates, and everyday strategies for thriving with a chronic illness. And if you have a topic you'd like to hear about, send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep pushing forward, keep advocating for yourself, and remember, you are more than your diagnosis. You are powerful, you are unstoppable. Thanks for listening to Living Chronic. See you next time.